welcome along. If someone can just put in the group chat, if you can see me on screen and hear me, that'd be good, so we can know we can. Yeah, good, excellent. So it's a little bit strange. I was looking forward to some music to start with, but yeah, unfortunately not tonight. And I know Matt, our media guy, had lined up some samba beats to get us into the mood. So welcome along to our weekly coaching webinar, where we talk all things about the beautiful game, and each week we pick a different topic to have a discussion. And tonight, in a minute, we'll welcome in Cristiano de Santos, one of my colleagues, and a good friend of mine, Cameron Grieves, to talk about futsal and how futsal looked in their environments. So to start with, what I'll do is, like I do every week, I just want to set the scene, go into a bit of context about the futsal, and almost give you a bit of background into my journey with the version of the game, which to start with was pretty much nothing. So if we can share my screen, get that on board, and we'll get into it. So what I'm going to do is just go through, as I said, talk about some research I've found, some research that I've been looking at over the past few days about how we can use the power of futsal really to harness player development, especially looking at that junior age, that player in the skill acquisition phase, 9, 10 through to 13. So 3 areas of discussion tonight. As I said, I'll go through the first part and look at how we can really use futsal to empower the development of our junior players. We'll then talk to Cristiano, and we'll look at the influence that futsal had on his player development journey, and give us a perspective on how it operates in Brazil and other countries in South America. And then I'll hand over to Cameron Greaves, someone who I've known now for a few years, and is junior development officer within a community club with about 750 players, and one of the first clubs that I know that have fully integrated futsal and football for their development programs. So it just becomes the development of the game as opposed to look at them as separate components. And he's got a really good presentation to show you how they've done that within their club. And then really we're talking about tonight is the training area, and we'll touch on probably some of the match as well. So I thought the best thing to do tonight would be to bring something to life, to show you some clips, because really what we're going to be talking about is how we're using futsal, how we can use it to enhance the development of football players. So enjoy this little bit. And Cristiano, there's a Brazilian players just for you. We'll just close out of that because I've just been told the sound's not working, so we'll get that going. Hold on, give me a second. There we go. Hold on, let me give it a go. Sorry, as I talked about the other week, I've got a new computer and a Mac, and I'm still learning how to use it. So I'll try that video again. So here we go with a bit of sound this time. hopefully, well, I'm not sure what's happened there, but we've lost it. Oh well, I understand that maybe the picture and the sound was a little bit distorted. So what we'll do, we'll carry on. So as I said before, that I'd start off with giving you an outline of my futsal journey. So for me, when I was a junior player and a youth player, futsal, it didn't exist. The version of indoor football that I played, that was the one with the walls and with the almost the big fuzzy tennis ball. This is what we sort of played socially with our friends in the off season, and when I was growing up in the 90s, and maybe the pitch conditions weren't quite as good as they are now with the access to artificial, and often when the pitches were waterlogged, you wouldn't be able to train. So we either went into one of the indoor facilities, and one of the clubs I actually played for had a gym, and it was just activity, and it was just five-a-side or four-a-side indoor football bouncing off the walls. And one of the things I remember is the ball continually being stuck in the corner, and then you had to hold 3 or 4 people off you while you were trying to turn out. So I was first exposed to futsal probably would have been the early 2000s, where a teammate of mine had played a little bit before and invited me down to come along and play. And I didn't really get the concept of what futsal was. He said, we're going. I'm like, well, what is it? He's like, it's indoor football. So here's me thinking to coming down and I'm going to have a football where you can play it off the walls. And he's like, no, there's outs. And I'm going, well, I don't quite understand how that works. And it being something I'd not seen before, and I played a couple of times, and the first time was like, why is the ball so heavy? And then didn't really have much involvement until I moved to Australia in the mid-2000s, and a group of friends and I would play futsal because the court there, which was at Albert Park, was literally over my back fence, and we formed our own futsal team, and we played in the off-season, but very much saw it as a social sport that you played when was outside the football season. Played a few seasons, but didn't really take it too seriously, and just thought it was a bit of a laugh and a bit of a game to play with your mates. So probably in about 2013, 2014, now I was sort of stopped playing myself and was going down my own coaching pathway, involved with federation teams and running federation programs. And what I really saw football was, to start with, was that it was an interruption. It took players out of programs that I was either managing or delivering. And I remember I was preparing a regional team, a federation team. I think it was about 2015 for a national tournament. They were under 16, and I had a couple of players who were also playing in the Futsal National League, and they were being removed from trainings. And I lost them for games to prepare for this national tournament. And I really looked at it as it was a disruption to what I was trying to do. That's not how I see it now, though. And through my own journey over the last few years, I've seen what the role futsal can play in player development, which actually led me a couple of years back getting involved with futsal as a coach. And there's a picture of me, I think, from about 2018, where I had been working with one of our regional federation team and took them to a national tournament. That group there was under 14s, and sort of really for a while dived into futsal and embedded myself in there to get a bit of knowledge. And at that stage also, I started delivering futsal coach education and really started to appreciate how the two versions of the game, how they can complement each other. And it's something that I've continued to look into and continue to research, and especially I see for the junior player and potentially the youth player, just look at them as different versions of the game that can complement each other's development. And there might be an age where they get through as 15 or 16 where they might decide that one version of the game will be more important to them and they'll dedicate a little bit more time. But especially in that junior age, it's just two versions of the game that we can use to develop players. So one thing that I thought we'd start off by doing is, think about if we wanted to create a football player. Here's some of the things that, some of them are a little bit cliche, but commonly I hear when I speak to coaches what they're looking for and what they want to develop in players. So we talk about players want to be good decision makers. They want to be creative and make things happen. An ability to beat players 1v1, they're good to play in tight areas and good off both feet. They have a good passing range. They're able to use deception to disguise passes, and they remain calm under pressure, and always seem to always have an ability to receive in space, and then are able to take up good positions on and off the ball. And so that's some of the common language when you speak to coaches when they use to describe players, as much as some of them are quite cliche, but that's how coaches sometimes will speak. So when we go through tonight, keep those at the back of your mind. So as I was doing my own research, I found through some FIFA documents, some very influential people in futsal, and you'll see some very influential players in a minute. And this is some of their short thoughts on futsal. So the professor here from Brazil, one of the leading researchers that looked at futsal, and just says it's no space equals better skills. And again, and I'm sure Cristiano will expand on shortly, it's a national laboratory for improvement. So what I'll do, I want to click through some comments just to allow you to read them from some very famous players who have embedded in futsal during their junior years. So again, one player that should need no introduction, and again, probably one of the first players that I saw on the world stage that we found out was a background in futsal. And again, I think we see that when we've all seen the videos of when he was a junior player and then what he did on the international stage. Another very famous player and one of my favourites in that Spanish setup. And again, from the Latin American, the Spanish background, where again the game's predominantly been developed and it's had a big influence on the game, and especially in the South American and in Spain. Yeah, someone said this player was very good at some stage, and the number of awards he's won that would back that up. And again, another one who started off playing futsal and then transitioned into football, and as he said there, how he became the player he is today. And then I didn't know, there was always a debate, who's the best player? Is it Messi or is it this one? And again, spent lots of his formative years playing futsal. And again, it's the debate, who is better? Is it Ronaldo or is it Messi? And if I put my money, I'm putting it on Ronaldo at the moment, because I think for me, he can create things just by himself, where sometimes Messi needs help from others, but that's just my opinion. But again, players that have had heavily involvement with futsal during their younger years. So other research I found, and you can go into Google and you can type in the benefits of futsal, and there's lots of documents that are available and lots of people have some thoughts. So here's the ones that I thought and picked out that I thought were the best. So again, it's about touches on the ball. So in a 40-minute game, you're touching the ball roughly every 29 seconds or 80 touches a match. Or if you compare that to outdoor football, yeah, it's 30 touches. So you're playing a game for half the time, but you're doubling the number of contacts on the ball. Ball control, obviously in a really tight area with lots of pressure, that if you don't have the ability to control and receive the ball, yeah, it's going to be very hard to become good at the game. And then the speed of play, and it's that limited space and that constant opponent pressure. Players have to learn to play quickly to survive. And I think also the speed of play, when one of the first things I noticed when I started coaching futsal was the speed of transition, and how on winning the ball you have to hurt teams quickly, and then you have to recover back into defensive shape quickly to stop teams hurting you. There's the actions are continuous. The game is so quick, and again, as an introduction to, as I guess a futsal coach, I remember one time where I was trying to get a player's attention when the ball went out, but the game restarts that quickly that I actually distracted my player for all of about half a second, and that was enough for actually us to concede. And I had to put my hand up and say sorry. And again, with only 4 players on the pitch, and I think this is something that Cameron will bring to life a little bit later on, it's about the efficiency you have to be with your players' positioning to make sure that you've always got a player supporting beside, above and below the ball, because the rotational nature of players. Framing the goal, you know, the goal size, the penalty area is perfect, it's narrow, about the angle, and you really have to work hard on your ability to create goal scoring situations. And then the knowledge you can develop with just 4 players on court, you know, can be shared into the outdoor game. And because you've got players who are actioning the actions more often, around the support, around the speed of the game, can help players' understanding of both futsal and futsal is enhanced. And I think this is the big one. And I think this is be one that I think Cristiano is going to share with us. It encourages, because of the nature of it, it encourages players to be creative and think outside the box. And I've seen it myself. Players will try things in futsal that they'd never risk doing it on the pitch in the 11-a-side game. And I guess how they beat players 1v1, some of the combination play, and even how you score and finish goals can be developed in futsal and then transfer into the 11-a-side game. But I think at this stage, there's a warning to be had. So a lot of what I've presented so far is anecdotal evidence. And so what I mean by that, it's information that heavily relies on people's personal testimony. It's people's thoughts. And I guess it's subjective by nature. And we know that actually if we want something to be proven, often we need scientific evidence. And again, that is evidence that sort of backs up or counters scientific theory, and it's generally based on statistical analysis. And then if you're a lawyer and you were presented a court case and you had to decide what evidence you were going to take, yeah, often you'd be going, well, I'd rather put everything on the scientific evidence instead of the anecdotal evidence. So what I've sort of last week spent my time doing is looking for articles that were available to me that actually backed up some of the anecdotal evidence that I've presented and that you can find online. And I found one study that was quite recent. It was published in 2018. And it was a journal article. And the thing about journal articles is that they're very objective data. It's a study that's been scrutinized, it's been peer reviewed, and it's been mediated before it's been published. And what they sought to do, and the purpose of their research, was to look at how they can use futsal as a development tool for football. And again, it was investigating the perception from high-level youth coaches and players to determine if the game of futsal had a positive transfer into our 11-a-side context. And so that's the study there. And so what they did in their rationale for the study, it was based on 4 key elements. They looked into, in the UK, and the FA and the Premier League academies, and they invest a huge sum of money in the elite player performance plan. So the academy programs that the Premier League and some of the league football clubs run. They scrutinised a number of the plans, and in general they showed little consideration for futsal, despite some of the evidence that it aided for player development. They also saw that UEFA have in reports, again, anecdotal evidence from player interviews, reports from international players who regularly participated in futsal at younger ages. And they analysed, and there's analysis and evidence that shows that practice histories of elite academy players also show futsal had a big impact on their development, especially from those players from South American countries. So what they did, they created a survey, and it was, again, around the skill acquisition in futsal and how it could be transferred across to the 11-a-side game. And so what they did, they got on board 56 Premier League academy coaches. And you can see there, half of them would have had a B license and roughly the other half were A licensed coaches. And they got the participants to a survey, and what they did a survey before and after some showcase futsal matches that involved England's under-21 international futsal team. And the surveys were delivered in 2 parts. So 30 minutes before, they'd complete a survey, and then immediately after the showcase games, they'd complete another survey. And this is what some of their research and their findings showed. So again, around the technical and tactical corner, they saw the ability to develop first touch and ball manipulation skills. And again, that was due to the pitch size and the pressure that players were under in the format. Developed multifunctional players as a consequence of the way the players rotate on court and that fluid nature of how the game is played. GKs, they thought, showed enhanced technical qualities, especially with their feet, especially when they become the fifth player. And again, the attacking and defending skills, they sure actually thought that was because of, again, the nature of the game, that players rotated around the pitch and would end up on each side of the court, would help develop players use both sides of the body. And then also the futsal rules and the format of the game and how important the transitional moments are. And then I thought it really improved the frequency of counter-attacking situations. Then around the physical and mental corner, it was they thought the ability to make substitutions unlimited and very quickly, like roll on, roll off, increased the intensity of the sport. And findings that they found there also backed up some other studies that they'd looked into around the intense physical demands it had on the aerobic and anaerobic systems. And again, they thought that their research showed that the skills acquired through futsal, and especially in that developed in tight, high-pressure situations, they saw it as an important coping strategy for young and developing youth players. And again, the big one was, and one that I think will come out, a theme that will come out tonight, is the development of creativity. And you know, creativity is what makes the special players and what makes the players at the very top of the game who they are. And again, from their study, they had a couple of key recommendations. And the first one was that they found there was a potential transfer of skills between the formats, and that futsal offered a coaching methodology similar to small-sided games, and they felt that there was enhanced ability to really aid a player's skill development. They encourage stakeholders and governing bodies that they should really look to consider how they integrate futsal into talent curriculum and how they work in talent development programs. And they really thought that the constraints and the nature of football was really crucial to include in, and that a lot of that is around informal coaching practices because of the constraints of the court size, the nature of the game. And they thought that those constraints really enhance player development. So what I'll do is, that's pretty much from me. So just to set some context, to say, well, yes, we've all seen that there's a lot of anecdotal evidence out there, but it is an area that's now being researched, that there are scientific studies that are backing up that anecdotal evidence and showing that it should be something that we do consider for talent development programs, and using them to work in collaboration as opposed to looking at them as maybe I did a number of years ago, looking at them that are a different context and they're different formats of the game. So what I'd like to do now is introduce you, not that he needs too much of an introduction, to one of my colleagues, Cristiano. So a number of you will know Cristiano, and you'll know his background in the game, and having a very successful career in the Netherlands before coming to Australia. So Cristiano, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
How are you surviving at the moment without football, mate?
Yeah, it's been a challenge at the moment, to be honest. But I think everyone else is the same situation. So
yeah, it's just one of those things that I guess every day that goes past, though, is that we're closer back, coming back to football at some stage.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for coming on. And I know for the time that we've spent in the office, and for people that haven't been to our office, Cristiano and my desk were actually next to each other. And in my first, I guess, 8 weeks when our office was open, we had a number of conversations about football and futsal, and shared many an anecdote. So what I like to do is just ask you some questions, see how big a part futsal played in your career, and just share some of the things that went through your development journey.
Yeah, that's fine.
So I know that in South America, especially because futsal originated in Uruguay, that futsal is often a game that majority of players will start out with. Especially in Brazil, does junior football exist as we know it here, or does everybody start off playing futsal?
Well, like you mentioned, that was originated in Uruguay, but not, of course, we Brazilians made it better.
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
Well, in Brazil, kids, they don't start playing like football up to under 13. So now they bring a little bit down to under 12s. But at the age of like competition for football starting in under 13, anything else below that is only futsal.
Yeah, and is that with a predominantly a futsal club only, or do the football clubs have a futsal department or a futsal avenue for them?
Yeah, so I will explain how it works at clubs in Brazil. So the clubs, they have from under 7 up to under 20.
Yeah.
So, but what happens is from under 7 up to under 13, they have the futsal competition. They only play futsal. They participate in other football and 7-sided tournaments, but their main competition is only futsal.
Okay.
And you explained really well before why is the reason, which we're gonna come back on that one soon. Yeah. But yeah, they only play futsal.
Okay. And then give us an outline of how futsal really shaped your junior playing years.
Well, for me, it was like I used to play a lot of futsal at school, because even in Brazil at schools and they have futsal programs. And I started playing at school. Then after I went to play for a club, futsal club, played for a couple of years. And then I moved into a football academy after that. And then that's when I got the opportunity to go for a trial in Holland. So pretty much I didn't play much football in Brazil. There was mainly futsal. Okay. And when I moved to Holland, that's actually when I actually went play really football. Yeah. So, and it helped me a lot, because moving to a country like in Holland, where the game is very fast, and for me, coming from futsal background where the game is really fast as well, so it was a little bit easy to adapt, of course, but yeah, it helped me a lot. Yeah.
And then you touched on, so at the moment when you transition out of futsal into futsal, you said that's around, at your age it was about 13, and now it might be slightly younger. Yeah. But how does that process work? How do you go from being predominantly a futsal player and then into an academy where you're playing football? How does the transition work, and do players, obviously some stay just futsal players only?
Yeah, futsal. Yeah, what happens is a lot of players, they make the transition after to go into football. But in Brazil also you have a competition up to 30 only for futsal. So you have both pathways. Yeah. So a lot of players, they make the transition into football after, but a lot of players, they prefer to keep playing only futsal. Yeah. And futsal in Brazil is huge. So players get good money by playing futsal, a professional. So there's both pathways, but a lot of players were the age of 12, 13, they move into football.
Yeah. And how does that work? Do they go from straight into an 11-a-side football, and how do you transition out of futsal and then take up the 11-a-side game, obviously with more players on the pitch, a bigger area?
This is the thing that in Brazil, the format is a little bit different than here. So like under 12s, for example, they don't play 11-a-side.
Yeah.
So they play 9 aside. They're going from 5 to 7 to 9 and to 11 aside. So of course, make a jump from 5 aside to 11, that would be like huge. All right.
Yeah.
The transition to under 12, go to a 7 aside on the 11 and under 12s, but they keep playing futsal, but they keep experimenting the 7 aside and then later the 9 aside. So when they go into transition to 11 aside, it's easy.
Yeah. And if I'm a player, or like when you're a player and you've transitioned from futsal into a football club, and when you're 13, 14, 15, will you only do football, or will you still be exposed to still play futsal alongside?
Now, once you make that transition into football, that's where you got all your skill acquisition you should have,
Yeah.
and then you only play football. So then, unless if you don't want to play football anymore, and then you can go back and play futsal, because the pathway is still there to play weekly and training every day futsal and playing weekly competition only for futsal. But once you make the transition, like the players you showed on the video before, once those guys, you forgot Coutinho in there as well. So once you make the transition into football, and then you just keep going to football. Because what happened is, for those players, they start getting to the game training phase of football.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And then, so as you mentioned before, you left Brazil at a relatively young age, at 16, and went straight into the Dutch system. So on arrival, which would have been the late 90s, how popular was futsal in Holland?
Well, when I got into Holland, futsal in Holland, in Belgium, it's huge as well. But I didn't play in the futsal over there. But everything the clubs they do over there, it's all in a tight area as well. So it's a type of it's a format of futsal, but of course in football pitch. But everything in a tight area. But futsal in Holland, in Belgium, is huge as well.
Okay. And has it changed from obviously you spent roughly 10 years in Holland? Did you see the game change over there with futsal and clubs start integrating it, or did it?
Yeah. Especially the big clubs like Ajax. Yeah, they do a lot of futsal in young age.
Yeah.
Or a small pitch on synthetic.
Yeah.
Synthetic with the futsal balls, and then they do a lot of that. That's why they have the best school in Holland.
Yeah, so they've really taken some of the futsal components, but then integrated it into their football development programs, even though they're still delivering it outside in a football context. Yes. Still using the principles. Yeah. And then I guess at us, you're now based and been based in South Australia for a number of years, and how do you think we could incorporate futsal into our football development programs here?
Well, I think the main key in Australia is we started going to the skill acquisition phase, where not all the clubs, they do have a skill acquisition program. So the easiest way, in my opinion, to do is implement maybe for the skill acquisition phase age group, once a week the futsal.
Okay.
Because futsal, a game of futsal without any teaching, teaches you a lot.
Yeah.
So like you mentioned, the transition, the tight area, the decision making, the creativity, just playing a game of futsal, that will teach you heaps. And that's what I think the best skill acquisition here in Australia would be that.
Yeah. And again, if you're talking about the skill acquisition phase, I think what would be the key benefits would be that they're exposed to futsal, they go through into the game training phase, and would you say that their football actions and their core skills are just more refined?
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. And then again, you've played for a number of professional clubs, and you just talked about recently how some of the clubs in Holland have brought futsal components into their training. But as a senior professional, have any of the clubs you've played for incorporated futsal into their training?
Only in the winter.
Yeah.
When it's very cold and snowing, then we go indoor.
Yeah. And what was the players? It was again, when I was younger and we did that, it seemed to be just like it was just a bit of fun. It was a fun session. It was just to go out and play. Was it the same in your environments, or was it?
No, we used to have like a passing practice, positioning game, and a 4v4 plus end players.
Yeah.
But of course, having sessions like that in a futsal court with the proper futsal ball and futsal shoes.
Yeah.
It's a high intensity, you know.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we used to have like a proper futsal.
Yeah.
Like,
and that was obviously in the middle of the European winter when the grounds are under a little bit of snow.
Or just a little bit, not as much.
Yeah. And then again, the one thing that I've sort of seen over the last few years, the more I've engaged with futsal, is for a junior level, is there actually two versions of the game? And we talk about the football game and the futsal game. Or really is it just the game, because they're at that age, they're very similar, and it's just players playing a version of futsal? What's your take on that?
Well, when I watch, for example, a game of football, and then I always look in the part of a futsal game in there. So if it is in 1v1 situations, or a counter-attack situation, transition, or if it is a rotation moment in football, I always have in back of my mind as, oh, that's futsal movement.
Yeah.
So it means that the game of futsal really implements into football.
Yeah.
If you look like, for example, everyone talks about Barcelona because they work a lot on triangles, things like that. But it's like you're playing a futsal in a big pitch.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you think that could be a way that, obviously we talk about in this part of the world, we kind of lack that football culture, that street football culture of some of the other more established football nations? Is it a way that we could potentially almost get that street football concept back?
Yes, I think you're right. So we lost that a little bit here in Australia, but I think like in those days, I will give just a quick example, which is in line with your question. In Brazil, you have instead of a basketball court, you have futsal courts everywhere.
Yeah.
So I think, of course, here in Australia, the street football disappeared a little bit in the past because people start getting a little bit anxious and fears to let your kids playing outside. But it's a lot of parks, basketball courts, netball courts, and even a tennis court could easily implement into futsal. There is one now at St. Clair Futsal Court.
Which is just around the corner from my house. And
just around the corner of your house. So you can see yourself, if you go there every day in the afternoons, there are kids there.
Yeah.
So I think to bring that street football format back, they should build more futsal courts.
Yeah.
It's not hard though.
Yeah, because I know I spent a little bit of time over summer in Europe, and spent a bit of time in Holland, and you drive around their streets there, and another thing that you do notice, there are a number of street futsal courts or cages that the kids are in and playing. So
yes, I agree. Yeah.
So you talked about sort of that transitional moment and the speed of the game, and it helped you settle from when you moved into the Dutch system. But what other key attributes did it allow you? Sort of some of the football actions. You're a goal scorer, you're a striker. How did playing futsal impact that as you went through the system and became a professional player?
Well, if you look, especially in the position that I played, striker, I start actually as right winger, and then once I was start get slower, they moved me into a striker.
Yeah, it happens. It's better to go there than the backwards.
Nah, that wasn't that reason. So, and then what happened is, especially player in winger. So I think every coach in this workshop here tonight would like to have a winger who's got the ability to beat the play in 1v1 situation. So that's the style of play of like today's game. Everyone would like to have that player who can take players on.
Yeah.
All right. So, and coming from a futsal background, when in my young age, I was really, really good on that. So, and that helped me a lot going to Holland and then say, okay, 1v1 situation, go for it. And then, of course, the playing in a striker position, you rely on scoring goals.
Yeah.
So, and the futsal, you can see in any futsal session, there are goals.
Yeah.
There are opportunity for shots on goals.
Yeah.
So, which normally some depends on the club that you coach. You don't have those availabilities to have goals in your training session and goalkeepers available to have shots on goals, which in a futsal session, yes, they are there. So that helped me a lot as well.
Yeah. And how did futsal, because again, playing as a striker, you earn your money by scoring goals. And how did playing futsal, how did it help you develop a variety of different finishing techniques?
Well, that's a very good question. As you see, I always talk about him. Romario scored more than 1,000 goals, and most of his goals was with toe.
Yeah, yeah, but we tell kids they can't shoot with their toes.
Sorry?
That's where a lot of coaches will tell them they can't use their toes.
Well, inside the box, tight area, so you don't have much space to like swing your legs. It's just a little toe. And if you score, I tell you, if you have a kid who scored 10 goals in 3 games with toe, I don't think any coach is gonna say
no. No, I agree. And I remember Oscar's goal at the start of the 2014 World Cup when he scored with his toe. And it was like, I remember seeing that at the time and going, I'm going to record that and show it on coaching courses, because a lot of coaches will go, no, you can't score like that. No. So if you're saying we've got development programs, and especially in the junior age, where they're participating in both football and futsal, and again, that's what Cameron's going to share with us very, very shortly and how their club do it.
Yeah.
What age do you think they need to start specialising in one version of the game more than the other?
I think they should start on a younger age. So I see players doing especially in the mini rules.
Yeah.
So players in the mini rules age group, they like to do what? To dribbling, to run with the ball, to score goals. So I think that's a good age to start.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And what about you get into that youth and senior phase? Do you think there's at any times where, I'm a 15 or 16-year-old player, and if I'm still trying to play both formats of the game, is there ever a point where things will start contradicting other formats of the game, for example? So some of the I guess key principles in senior and youth futsal compared to football. Is there any parts where the games are different that we need to be mindful of?
I think when you get into that age, especially in football, you start going to a tactical, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, and then that's why we in Brazil, we're doing younger age, because you get technical when you go into game train phase. It's more tactical, but you got the foundation.
Yeah.
I think when you get into an old age group, you probably should focus just in one aspect, I think, in my opinion.
So you could go, right, I'm going to be a football player, and I'll say that my emphasis is going to be on football, but I can still play futsal in a social capacity or vice versa.
Sure, yeah. Like my son plays futsal for fun. He loves futsal, but he plays like football for his club.
Yeah.
But he still can play futsal for social, for fun, and off-season.
Yeah.
Off-season, I think all the clubs, even in the senior level, should encourage players to play futsal, because in the off-season, you stop like for, 2 or 3 months. Lots of coaches encourage players to do other sports, but I think if you want to produce football players, you need to encourage your players to play football. Yeah. And futsal will help a lot on the technical aspect of football, especially in the younger age group. So 3 months that your player are doing swimming or other sports, if they do futsal, when they come back, their skill level will lift heaps.
Yeah, and I guess that's better than maybe some of the more senior players. Once the off season happens, they don't touch the ball for a number of months before they come back into pre-season training.
And then all of a sudden they want to run 10Ks, 15, 20Ks. They can get injured. But if they've been playing futsal once a week in a social competition,
Yeah.
I think they should do it.
Yeah. And just one last question before we open it up to the participants, because I see that we've got some questions coming in.
Yeah.
Again, just touch on that. We sort of touched on it a little before, but just from your opinion, what would you say are the three key benefits for integrating futsal into a club's football development program? What would be the big ones that you take away?
I think it's the foundation, the technique, the skill, the creativity, you know?
Yeah.
The freedom to give a player and say, look, of course, by doing football, you have a lot of freedom, creativity. You learn a lot. That's what we spoke once about the hidden learn.
Yeah.
Lots of things in futsal that come in place that you don't do in football. But I think one of the most thing I would say is just the general foundation.
Yeah. So again, it's that technical base.
Technical, yes. If you don't have that,
yeah,
forget it.
Yeah. And again, it's a turbocharged version of a five-a-side game.
Yeah.
Yeah. What we'll do is, Matt, if you're there, I know we've got a few questions coming in, so if we'll get started with some of them for Cristiano, and then if anybody else has got any questions, please just remember, just put question into the chat box, and then we'll unmute you and you can ask away. So who have we got up first, Matt?
We've got Sam. Sam, you're up.
Hey, Cristiano.
Yes.
Hey, just from your experience in Brazil, the under sort of 10 age group, how many shots on goal would they have in a match compared to what you'd see in an under 10 game in Adelaide?
It's a trick question, yeah, because it's under 10s, yeah.
Yeah, under 10s, under 12s, you know, sort of where we'd call it the, you know, sort of foundation age.
Yeah, that's look, we can't compare, because under 10s, under 12s they play futsal. Now they have a lot of shots on goal, and here under 12 they play 11 aside, isn't it?
So could that be one of the reasons why Australia's players are struggling to score goals at the elite level?
Well, if you don't have that repetition very often, you're not gonna get better. So I think the more you practice, the better you get. So I think, yeah, playing in the under 12s, it's my opinion, right? In a big pitch where you probably can have 5 or 6 shots on goal per game, instead of a game of futsal that you're probably gonna have 6 or 7 shots in 5 minutes. So I think it's delay a little bit the process, in my opinion, though.
Yeah, well, good, mate.
Cool. Good question. Who have we got next, Matt?
We've got Ken.
Cristiano. I love the game of futsal. I always loved it, and it's very fast. It's everything. I agree with everything really been said, but I know there are a lot of coaches that's very concerned about the injuries on the hard floor with the ankles and everything like that. What's your view on that then? Or is there anything we can do to prevent or reduce the amount of injuries?
Well, to be honest, I haven't seen many injuries in futsal myself, all right? Even when we have our state teams training and go to nationals, we went to international tournaments, the numbers of players got injured playing futsal was like minimum.
Yeah.
But of course, the game of futsal, it's a lot of change of direction, stop, start, change of speed. I understand a lot of coaches are scared about the injuries, but to be honest, I haven't seen many injuries in futsal. I haven't seen a lot of injuries in football. I have done my ACL playing football, but I never got injured playing futsal. So I think it's a bit of unlucky process, to be honest.
Yeah. No, great. Thanks.
Cool. We've got a couple more there, Matt.
Yeah, we've got our friend and esteemed colleague, Paul. Good evening, Paul.
How are you, Paul?
How are you? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, no, just a really quick one from me. Goalkeepers, the evidence that this is to both of you, Alec and Cristiano, some of that research you saw before, just interested in whether the benefits apply equally to goalkeepers or if there's anything separate that you might sort of look at from that point of view.
If I go first, Cristiano, I think it's for me, it's an area that I would like to do some more research into. Just from my perspective in coaching futsal, I think there's some different techniques used in futsal that may not always transfer across into futsal. But again, it's an area that I think actually there probably needs to be some research in to see what the transferability between, again, the set position and futsal and I guess the core goalkeeper actions in that version of the game and how well they transfer into 11-a-side football. Again, it's something that may be something that needs to be investigated. Cristiano, what's your thoughts?
Well, some of the technique in futsal goalkeepers in football, they are similar. Most of them are similar. The distribution, all those stuff, those things is similar. The only thing I would say, like in football, the goalkeepers, they dive, all right? In futsal, you're going to try to stop the shot with your feet.
Yeah.
So especially when people trying to score on the back post, if you're going to, as a goalkeeper, if you're going to try to dive on back post, the ball's already in the net because the game is so fast, which in football, they dive and, okay, they can reach the ball.
So
and the goalkeeper as well, so. So
would it be fair, Cristiano, that a goalkeeper is probably going to use sort of like a smother or a block,
yes,
than a diving save?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah, cool. Good question.
Cheers, guys.
Who do we go to next, Matt?
Our good friend Michael Gallagher. Good evening, Mike.
Yes, good evening. Hello, brother.
Hey, brother.
Just a question was recently at the World Championships in Florida, just to maybe share with us some of the differences that you noticed with the other countries and their players, their level, their setup and tactics versus the Australian players that went over there, and maybe share with us some of your tactics.
With my technique, my technique.
And mainly just the difference in the players, level of players and the setups of the teams, you know, internationally versus where we are from Australia's point of view.
Yeah, well, that's a huge difference. But you saw yourself. So we watched some of the games and we could see the technique of those players. And the speed of the game and the awareness, is a different level compared to our Australian players. However, like I mentioned earlier, they train futsal 4 times per week because they only play futsal. So, but it's funny because if you would put some of those players to play into a football pitch, they will do so well because all the aspect of football is already in there. And then we saw some of the actions of the teams over there, and we want to compare with our teams. He is a huge difference. So I was glad I didn't play against the state from Rio de Janeiro, man.
Yeah. Well, you can see they have a lot of setups, a lot of set plays, and you know, wherever the ball is on the court, you know, they're getting into positions and you know, making plays and moving the ball and moving into certain areas. You know, they really break it down into a lot smaller components of, you know, the tactics in the game.
Yeah.
As you say, it's much quicker. The decision making is huge. It's so quick.
Yeah, that was next level, to be honest.
I think we've got one more, Matt, unless some more come in for Cristiano. Is that right?
I think we've got a couple. So I'm not sure who it is, but whoever's got the Galaxy S6, you're up.
Yeah, hi there. This is Henry here. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
My question was to Cristiano. What's the maximum amount of games of futsal you'd recommend a week, in season and off season, for both players that play outdoor and for full-time futsal players?
So for full-time futsal players,
Yes.
wow, full-time futsal players, then it's a different situation. So
But I mean,
yeah,
some players play up to 3 games a night socially during the week.
yeah.
Is this too much?
Again, it depends how big is the competition, how big is your squad, how many nights you have left over for trainings. Because if you play 3 nights a week, so it's all depends. But is it all year round, like all year round, 3 nights a week?
For the sole futsal players, yes.
Yes. Yeah. So I think probably is a little bit too much. 3 games per week, unless if you have a very big squad to rotate players and also give you a little bit time to work on something.
Okay. Thank you.
So I never experienced that before. Play 3 games in a week. I played 2. Used to play 2 midweek and weekend, but 3 games. I never have the experience before. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Cool. Well, yeah, we've got one. What is that? A new question, Matt, come in?
Yeah, I also think, Reza, did you have a question? I see you've got a raised hand in Zoom, so I'm not sure if that means that you've got a question. And then one more from Sam.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we've got you, Reza.
Reza, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Hello, Cristiano. I just
Hello,
have
Reza.
2 questions.
Yeah.
First of all, when you was playing in Brazil, as a young kids, there was a lot of coaching, or just basically it was organized social game?
Great question.
Yeah. So when I used to play for a club, futsal club, that was like that was a structured training. That was a structured training and lots of technical training, especially on the passing, trapping, movement off the ball. That was a lot because the age.
How old you had when you went to the club?
Yeah, that was, I was about 10, 11 years old. So I was like, and then a lot of technical.
Therefore, my question to your second question is,
yeah,
considering you've been seeing the small side of the game in the pitches, which is most of the pitches is shocking, and we play in the winter, which is, again, it's not that pleasant for a lot of young kids. Yeah. Do you think we're doing right thing, and and a lot of coaches overstructure the small side of the game? Do you think actually we're going the right way, or be better off not having a small side pitch in grasses, just go futsal, and just like in Brazil or some of those countries, when the kids that are in the 11, 12 be introduced in the basically big pitch?
I think it would be good, it would be great if that could happens. The clubs going to small-sided games, introduce futsal, introduce 7-a-side on synthetic like they do in Europe, and then after they make the transition into 11-a-side pitch. I think would be really good, especially for financial side, because in a futsal court, you find like each school those days got a futsal court. So, and you can train in winter. If it's got air conditioning, you can train in the summer. And then you probably will avoid those situations having kids training on a wet pitch and things like that. And that will be more beneficial for their skills, of course.
Thank you.
All right. It seems that's the questions we've got. Any more, Matt, or are we ready to move on?
No, I think that's it. Well done, everyone. Great questions.
Yeah, really, really good. So first of all, Cristiano, thank you for giving up your evening. And as soon as I sort of spoke to Matt about this as a topic that we're looking at, we have to get you on board because we know how passionate you are about futsal, and how you've been, especially from a federation perspective, almost a driver of futsal for the last few years. So really appreciate you coming on board and giving up some of your evening and talking to us about futsal and your experiences and how it's helped you become the player you were, and then now you're sort of working with that next generation of players. So really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Alec, and hopefully everyone could get something out of this conversation. And hello to Sam. Sam, how are you, bro? Sam and I, we done AFC Level 1, AFC Level 2 together. He's a very good friend of mine from Victoria. He's doing a great job about futsal over there as well. So keep it up. And yeah, thank you very much. So I'm gonna move to my next meeting now. And all the best.
You've got a Zoom meeting with your NTC girls?
Yeah, I've got that with the under 15 girls,
Yeah, and I hope to see you back in the office sometime in the next few weeks.
Hopefully very soon, man. Hopefully. Fingers crossed.
All right, mate. Talk to you soon.
See you. Thanks.
Bye-bye. So what I'll do is introduce you to Cameron Greaves. So I've known Cameron for coming up 4 years now and have found him to be someone that's always looking for where he can develop his knowledge in the game, whether it be from a coaching perspective or whether it be looking into futsal or goalkeeping in different areas of the game. So Cameron, are you there? Can we get you on the screen?
Hey mate, can you hear me?
Yeah, we've got you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, thanks. How are you?
Good. So Cameron, obviously by his accent, originally from Northern Ireland and grew up in the football system over there and was involved in the Northern Ireland Youth International program and played in the Northern Ireland Premier League before deciding he wanted to see the sun and come out and live on this part of the world.
Yeah, that's probably a fair assessment.
Yeah.
The sun played a big part.
Yeah. So just what's, again, your background with futsal? Did it play any part of your development journey in Northern Ireland, or is it something so maybe more like my context where it was something that up until sort of the age of early 20 I didn't even know existed? So from you growing up, what was futsal like, or was it the good old-fashioned indoor soccer where you banged it off the walls and smashed people into corners?
Yeah, definitely more around the indoor football, kind with five-side or whatever the numbers were with the walls, and yeah, you find yourself in the corners quite a lot trying to get out pretty quickly. And it was more of an extension of our football training. It wasn't a separate component. It was, if like you touched on before, the European weather, if it was pretty bad outside or pitches were frozen or whatever, it was more of a let's do something as opposed to doing nothing. So we went inside and played five-a-side and that was it. It was more of the social sort of side of the game.
Yeah. And where did you sort of first come across futsal?
Yeah, it probably wasn't until 4 or 5 years ago when I came to this side of the world. Similar sort of thinking to yourself, in that when I first came across it, it was more in my coaching journey, and I seen it as a little bit of an inconvenience, as like you said, it had implications on players and their availability. But actually when I started speaking to people and doing a little bit of research myself and getting involved in the game, did I actually understand the true benefits of it and how much it can actually aid the player development. Yeah.
So you've now been working for a community club which has got about 750 playing members, and you've integrated, especially for junior and youth players, football and futsal into the same program.
Yeah. So that's something that's probably happened over the course of 18 months, maybe just over 18 months, and that's something that we looked at and seen an opportunity for us to actually extend our players, so improve them all year round, and a big part of that was trying to integrate the futsal into our current football programs.
Cool. So I know you've got a presentation that you've put together that I had a little preview of earlier, which was which I'm looking forward to you being able to share with everybody tonight. So if you go ahead and get that up on your screen and take it over.
I'll try my best. You can let me know, Alec, if this is all up and working. Can you see that, Alec?
Yeah, we've got that on screen, mate. So yeah, go ahead, tell us how it's operated and what you've done within your club environment and how it's all working and where you're looking to go next.
Perfect. Yeah, so just what Alec had touched on, the next sort of 20 minutes is all around us as a club, sort of the decisions we made, the sort of barriers we came across and had to get over in order for us to try and integrate futsal within our club environment. So that what will be the next sort of 20 minutes or so. So I'll give you a brief outline of how it will go tonight. Like I said, the football versus futsal debate, the implications, the rationale behind our decisions, and then what we did to try and integrate it into our program. So how we went about it, how it looked, and how it looks now with futsal incorporated. And then I'll give a little bit of sort of our analysis of the futsal season. So at the end of sort of 2019 and the start of 2020 was the first time we ran a futsal development program. So we've got some sort of learnings from that, some really key take-home messages that we're looking to put in place for obviously the upcoming futsal season at the end of the year, and then some considerations for you guys as coaches that we as a club had to take on board. So the first thing, I'll probably just give you a little background to the club that I'm currently operating in. So I've been involved in the club now for probably about 5 years. I came across as a player and played for a couple of years and sort of didn't agree with the direction of the club and certain things. So took a step aside, and then it wasn't until about middle of 2018 where the club, new people came into the club, so committee members and things, and they made about making a couple of big early statements around the direction of the club and what they wanted to do, and I seen it as an opportunity to come on board. So they just merged with the local junior club, so they had a pathway from junior to senior football for the very first time in their history. And they employed a director of football, and then I fell under the bracket of being part of that coaching team, me and a couple of other guys. And that was across the talent and community space. But for the most part, we were working within the talent space. And then we set about sort of developing programs for the remainder of that year, as it was around September, October time that we came into place. At that stage, probably something worth noting was that our futsal sat within the community arm of the club. So it wasn't anything within our remit to challenge and to improve straight away. But it was something that was sitting there within the club, and it was happening anyway in the background as such. So if we were to fast forward it then 12 years, so about 4 or 5 months ago till the end of 2019, we'd spent the year sort of implementing our football talent programs along with that had aligned with the national sporting organisation. So we had our football teams up and running in the talent space and the community space. And they were running and competing in their local leagues. It wasn't until probably about the end of March, April time where the club sat down and said, right, we need somebody to spearhead this. It could be a great opportunity for the club to move futsal to the talent side of the club. So we set about employing a director of futsal, and lucky enough for ourselves, we had somebody who was operating within our football programs who had a background in futsal and who had been sort of personally taken it upon themselves to go down the coaching pathway of futsal. So we employed that person about July time, and then they set about developing a futsal development program, and which started in term 4, so around October time for the first time, and then those teams were competing in their local futsal leagues at the weekend. So probably over that 12-month period, so from where we came into the club to then employing a director of futsal and creating a futsal development program, we set about questioning why we wanted to bring football, or we wanted to bring futsal within our football club, and how could we really integrate it into those programs that we set up. And a lot of it, which boils down to a key ethos of us as coaches and the director of football, very similar minded in terms of we're here to develop players. That's the be all and end all. We're here to develop players. And if we look at the sort of model that Alex talked about, and I know Cristiano's talked a lot about, those 4 key components of that we've seen as a great opportunity for us to use futsal to develop that in order to improve our football players. So I'll not talk too much because I'm around these key things. I'll probably only pick out a couple of really important ones that we as a club sort of focused on, and a couple of key ones that we seem to be real benefit through playing futsal. But it was probably, if we look at the technical aspect of the game, I know Alex talked and given the research and the stats around it in terms of the amount of touches on the ball and the speed of play and things like that. The key football actions are all there in a game of futsal, as Cristiano said. They're all there in a game of futsal. So if we can give kids the extension of doing that, then we are exposing them to more futsal and football situations that'll hopefully improve their technical ability and make them better players. And it's within that junior phase of our club, it's a big thing, that skill acquisition phase, to get these skills and to really, really work at them so that when they move through, they've got that solid base. If we move on to the mental side of it, a lot of those football actions, so they're all there, the perception, the decision making and the execution, that is always constantly there in the nature of the game of futsal. So it's so high paced. They need to be making futsal or football decisions, futsal decisions time and time and time again. I know Alec talked about the creativity and imagination. That's something that I'll touch on a little bit more later in terms of how us as a club, we want our players to play. But I know it's an important trait that a number of coaches and that look for in those attacking players. And then also the sort of mental skills that Alec touched on as well in terms of the confidence and those coping strategies being found in those situations time and time again. And then the last one, obviously, the set pieces. So it's a massive thing in futsal. It's often referred to as the fifth moment of the game, and that they're often off the cuff situations that just happen. But if we can create sort of decision makers, quick, effective decision makers that can then look to sort of benefit from a certain situation, maybe it be a corner kick or just a passing, that's something that will come out in the game of futsal. If we move on to then tactical, so as mentioned, 4 moments of the game are always there in the game. Obviously, the two big ones that come out more often than not are the transitional moments. So what they do when they've just won the ball, and what do they do when they've just lost the ball. And they come out time and time again in the game. And with our junior players, that's something that we don't coach, but they're getting exposed to. Obviously, our youth players, that's something that we do look to coach, and that's something that this can then help to further their understanding of that. Another one is the overload. So I know there's been a bit of talk around goalkeepers and things like that. How we see the game is where we want to use the goalkeeper as much as possible, okay, to create that overload or to allow us to advance the ball further down the pitch. And it's also given the goalkeeper the opportunity to work on those skills as well. And also creating players that understand how to overload situations, where they can overload situations, and how they can benefit from that. Probably the biggest one I want to sort of touch on is the flexibility and rotations. So how we as a club see the game and how we want our teams to play is there's a lot of flexibility in those rotations, and that players can move into positions, move out of positions, and create space for others and feel being comfortable in those positions. So if we look at it in a transfer from a football to futsal context, we look at sort of collaborating between units. So if we take an 11-side game, we've got a deep line midfielder and 2 advanced midfielders, and then we've also got a 9, our central striker who looks to drop in. Again, there's your 4, your diamond that is often played in the game of futsal. Another one that might play is that you've changed your midfield around, and you might have one higher who then can operate with your 2 wingers and your 11 and your 7 and also your 9. And again, that sort of diamond shape that comes out in the game of futsal, we want players to be comfortable in those rotations. And what happens more often than not in the game of futsal naturally is that these rotations happen all the time, and players who are comfortable playing in different positions. So this is just one little run through of how simple rotations happen in a game of futsal without players truly understanding it, which again can then transfer back into a game of football. So your 9 has started as the highest, he's the deepest one come the end, and it's your actual right winger who's ended up scoring the goal. So, like I said, further understanding of the game is happening implicitly all the time. So it's happening without the players even realising it, and that is such a key aspect for our junior players. And then last, physically, so obviously your agility, balance, coordination, speed, a lot of acceleration, deceleration, just on the nature of the game and the continuation with the goal or with the substitutions, the quick restarts, and obviously being able to play that at a high speed. I know I read a recent bit of research around the speed of the game, and it's shown that the total distance covered in futsal at a high intensity and at maximum speed is much greater in futsal than it is in football and basketball or other invasion games. So it's something that can be used as a tool physically for our players to improve that aspect, but it's also then, if we look at that last word on that list, the workload, it's a consideration for us as a club. And it's such a high energy game, and it's physically demanding. Then how are we going to work and how are we going to manage the workload with our players? And ultimately, we want to have people who enjoy the game. So it's fun for young players. It's fun for anyone who plays the game. They enjoy it. It's a high-paced game. Plenty of touches on the ball. Plenty of opportunities, 1v1s. And like Cristiano and Alec touched on before, people try things in futsal that they wouldn't try in a football game. So why not give them the platform to do that? Hopefully they build those mental skills and that enjoyment and confidence that they can then transfer that into an 11v11 context. So before I go into sort of the football programs that we have in our talent space, probably 2 key things to note before we talk about integrating them within our programs. A couple of considerations we took as a club before integrating was, yes, we know why we want to integrate futsal into our football programs, and we've talked about the benefits now. But the other things were around, like I mentioned, the workload. So how can we, a big thing of us integrating it within our football programs was knowing what our players were doing week by week, so we could manage that and to avoid injury and fatigue and burnout. But also, on the other hand, we want to roll this out within our club, but we have got one futsal coach within our club. All our coaches are football coaches. So how can we then get a buy-in from them to then be a part of our futsal development program as well as our football development program? So the workload and managing that, and then also the football coaches and the coaching side of it, I'll touch a little bit more on later. So in terms of the programs that we run at the club, and this is something that we integrated within our junior phase and our talent side, we've got our junior development program. So there's 2 parts to our junior development program. There's an open program where players get an opportunity to come along once a week and have an extra football training, and that's open to anyone within our club. And then we've got our junior development program plus, which is opportunity for selected players to come along twice a week for extra trainings. So they fit within our junior program, and then within our youth programs, we've got the youth development program, which is then open to our 13s and 17-year-olds. So they sit within the talent arm of our football program. Where we move on to then is our futsal development program. So this is something that we wanted to keep within our talent arm, and we offered it up to our junior development plus programs. So our selected players within our junior development, but also within our youth program as an extension of our youth development program. And then also we took a big step this year in trying to create a futsal development program for our senior players. Also worth noting that within our junior programs, that even though they might not get the futsal training, they still have the opportunity to join teams and play in their local leagues at the weekend. So we looked at it and we thought, how can we integrate it? And it comes down to timings and how many football trainings and how many futsal trainings. But we wanted to integrate a program that complemented. So we wanted to integrate a futsal program that complemented our football programs. So there's a number of things that we had to take into consideration around that. And the first one was we need to still play by our playing philosophy as a club. So that's ours, if you want to have a quick read through it, just around the moments of the game and what we want our teams to do in each moment of the game. But that's how we see the game, and that's how we want the game to be played. And that doesn't matter if it's football or futsal. So our futsal development program and our football development programs, they all align to our playing philosophy. In terms of our curriculums as well, so we've got a football development program and we've got a futsal development program. How can they align, and how can we get across the key principles from our playing style, our playing philosophy across both of those programs? So the messages messages that the players are getting are the exact same. And that boils down to the nitty-gritty, the day-to-day, your football training session. So a game training session for our youth players. Our key principle is around individual and combination play, purposeful attacking play, and that's the key principle that we worked on that night in our session. And then if we look at a futsal session, so again, key principle, combination play, purposeful rotation, controlled incisive possession. So it doesn't matter. It aligns to our playing style and our playing philosophy. The only thing that changes is the context that we deliver it in. So the messages, like I said before, the messages that the players are getting in an 11v11 is the exact same messages that the players are then getting in a 5v5 context. And that helped us across the year, like I said, that implicit understanding, that understanding the game was happening, as with the players not even realising half the time. So if we then look at the programs across the year, I'll just give you a quick overview of how it looked for the players. So as I mentioned before, the junior development program open. This is how it looked for them across the year. So from term 1 to term 4, it's an annual program, and it details the context that they had. So as I mentioned, for players within this program, where they get the opportunity to come along to one football contact extra each week, they don't have a futsal contact, but they do have the opportunity to play in those futsal games at the weekend, which is the like what you see in term 1, which is the figure 6, which is your 6-game context. And the same again in term 4. If we then look at our junior development plus program, there's obviously a lot more context, and within that, like we said, term 1 again, they've got the one football contact a week. They've also got one futsal training contact a week, and then they've got the opportunity of a futsal game on the weekend in the local league. So if we just show you a quick overview for our junior developer players, our junior players across the week. Obviously on a Monday, that's your football contact. So the key focus, the key skill that we focused on was movement to receive on the Monday night. So that's the same for the open and the plus program. And then on the Wednesday night, the plus program gets the extra futsal contact, which is then again focused around the core skill of progressing the ball forward on receiving. And then Sunday for both the open players and the plus players, that's an opportunity for them to put their learning in place in a futsal contact game. Moving on to our youth players. Again, another annual program that we run at the club, and similar in terms of term 1 and 4. You've got your football contacts a week, and then you've also got your futsal training contacts, and you've got your futsal game contacts as well. And if we look then at a weekly overview for players on our youth development program, you've got your Tuesday night training, which is your football training, your football contact, which is working on the attacking moment in the midfield, in the middle third of the pitch, and it's working on purposeful possession. And then in the futsal contact on the Thursday, still working on the attacking moment. We're working now on the attacking third, but we're looking at creativity and imagination. And this all aligns back to our playing style, how we see the game. Refers back to our playing style, refers back to the curriculums that we've produced for that term, both football and futsal. And then similar to the junior players, Sunday is the opportunity for us to analyse that in a game. Nothing more that we expect from a coach than just setting up the game, observing, and then making some notes and evaluating on the game, and then maybe making some decisions around the upcoming curriculum for the rest of the term.
So Cameron, just before you move on, mate, just help people just to make sure. So if I'm a player either in your junior development program or in your youth program,
yep.
When the futsal season is in operation, which is generally term 4 and term 1,
yep.
I'll come in at the start of the week and do a football session.
Yep.
And then the second session that I'll do is a futsal session, and then the observation context is a futsal game.
Yep.
And then during the football season, so typically terms 2 and term 3, it'll be football all the way through.
Yeah, so terms 2 and 3, as you can see in the youth program, in terms 2 and 3, there's absolutely zero futsal context. So you've got your football context in terms of trainings, and then you've got your football game at the weekend. And like Alex said, the only time that changes is term 4 and term 1 during futsal season, where your game is the futsal game.
Okay, and if you're in the open program, which is open to anybody in your club, you'll have and during the season and then outside the season, you can have an additional football contact outside your team, and then you can also play in a team that play in the local competition. Would that be right?
Absolutely. So they've got their own team training, but then we offer them one extra football contact during the year that they can come and get extra training, and they play their football game at the weekend, terms 2 and 3. We don't give them the extra futsal contact in terms 4 and 1 just yet, but we do give them the opportunity to join a team within the club that then competes at the futsal league during the weekend.
Okay. And do you have any players in club that only play futsal? Just they come in and play futsal with their mates?
Yes, absolutely. So we've got obviously with it being like a football off-season game traditionally, we get players who come from other clubs to then join our club, and well, not join our club, but play within players within our clubs. We're open to that. We especially within that open program, we want players to enjoy it, and if that means playing with their mates, then that's absolutely fine.
Cool. All right. I just thought I'd just ask a quick question.
No, that's absolutely fine. We're moving on to our senior players. Probably worth noting that we haven't run, as I maybe said before, that we haven't run a senior futsal development program at all, and it's something that we are looking to run off this year. Obviously, with the current landscape looking like a shorter grass season, we're there looking at the opportunities that this might arise for our futsal development program in terms of our senior space. And it's something that we as a club probably could do now, or we can do now, as opposed to my first experience when I first came to the club. Probably the culture and the type of player involved in the club wouldn't have seen this as an opportunity to develop further. It would have been seen as a burden and a waste of time when they could be doing something else in the off season during the summery months. Whereas now, I know the director of football and people within the club have worked really hard to create a culture that is all about improving and is all about getting better. And creating a program that can help that is something that has been a big push for the futsal. And I know that we've got a group of senior players where we've got an age or an average age of about 20, 21, who have the mentality of getting better every time they come to training, and will have the mentality that they'll play futsal in the off season in order to develop, or as an extension of their development, and that will be managed by us. It's also an opportunity for them, as I know Cristiano talked about, trying to really push it in the off season in terms of the physical component. We can manage their workload during the off season, and they can improve their technical ability through the nature of the game, and then obviously the mental side of it as well for the senior player in terms of being involved and being around their mates during that off season is often a key thing for our senior players. So that's something that we're looking to run at the end of this year. Obviously, if this is 2020, we didn't use it at the start of the year. This season, we were planned to have 66 football contacts. That's probably looking more like 26 So it's something that we look to integrate come the off season, whenever that is. Now just going to touch a little bit about our coaches. As I mentioned at the start, we have development programs in our football side that are full of coaches and accredited coaches and people who have a good understanding of the game. But we didn't have any futsal coaches within our midst, bar one, who was competent and who had taken it upon themselves to go down the futsal coaching journey themselves. So we as a club, we needed to, yes, we could run futsal as it was and continue it in the community arm and have those facilitators, but we wanted to bring it into the talent arm where we were exposing players to the right coaching, the right experiences in order for them to develop. So a big thing for us initially was getting the buy-in from our current football coaches, how we sold it to them. And we refer back to the culture of the club. We sold it to them as an extension on the player development. So this is going to aid player development. And that's all it took. So we've been very fortunate in that we've got coaches who, when they sign up to coach in our junior development programs, our youth development programs, they are now comfortable delivering and being involved in the futsal development program in the football off season. So the first thing we did, and because it was in the community arm, we wanted to move it into our talent arm. We had our coach to coach sessions. So this was the first thing we did with our coaches. And this was all around sort of the basic playing concepts. So positional play, attacking defensive strategies, as well as some courtside expectations and a little bit around session planning and providing them with some session plans, as well as some sort of game day management sort of strategies around warm-ups and player rotation and things like that. On top of that, once we had our coach-to-coach sessions, we set about having some formal coach education evenings. So these happened sort of on a 6-weekly basis in the lead up to the futsal season, and then on a monthly basis during the futsal season. And these were all around us introducing the futsal development program to them. So how did it look across the 10 weeks? How did it align to our playing style? How the curriculum looked week by week? And then obviously talking to them around the 4 moments of the game and including set pieces. And like I said, referring back to our playing style. And then ongoing support. This is something that is a big driver for us in the football side of the game, but also the futsal side of the game. We big advocate for the ongoing support. And again, that cultural side, that we don't just leave the coaches with a coaching handbook. We try and give them on-court assistance. So our director of futsals at the courts, helping out, offering suggestions. He's also there at training nights, giving some advice, observing coaches in their delivering at times, and letting the coaches observe. So that ongoing support is a key thing for us as a club. Because we make coaches better, we make players better, and that's the ultimate aim. So again, just a weekly overview for us, our coaches within the club. So if they're part of the Junior Development Plus program, they've got a football contact on a Monday, and they've got a futsal contact on a Wednesday, and then they've got the observation with the game on the Sunday. And those training nights are focused on the core skills, so the key football actions. Within our youth program, we work on football problems in a football contact on a Tuesday, a futsal contact on a Thursday, and then we use the futsal game on a Sunday as a means of observation and analysis of our player development. So that's all about why we wanted to integrate it, how we set about integrating it, and some of the things that we came across. As I mentioned, just finishing just over a month ago was the end of the futsal season, and it was our first year as a futsal development program. So just some of the things that we took from that year, some learnings, some things worth noting, and the objective things to start out with obviously our first full year, doubled the number of the teams that we fielded, and became the biggest futsal club in our region. Over 160 players and 26 teams spread across the age groups from under 9 the whole way up to under 19. And then the subjective side of the game, and that us as coaches, this is what we have seen across the futsal season. So knowledge and understanding has improved, and that's from our 9s the whole way up to 19, and that's just the game being the teacher. That might not just be us coaching the specifics around futsal. That's at under 9, the game being the teacher, and players' knowledge and understanding has improved as a result. Style of play improved. We've seen heaps upon heaps of individual development in the futsal space, and then we could see that translate into our football space before it got interrupted. And we've seen heaps upon heaps of players having fun, enjoying it, playing with a smile on their face, turning up, looking forward to their sessions. So that was a big tick in our box at the end of the program. In terms of looking forward to the upcoming futsal season, a couple of key learnings from us as a club, are a couple of key things that we want to action upon sooner rather than later, are the 3 on screen. So finding a better training venue. Court space is very difficult to find, and it makes a big difference in the quality of the program that you can deliver. So finding a sustainable venue is number 1 on our list in order for us to enhance the program, which obviously better experience for our players. Another big area is developing the futsal development program even further. So we've talked already. It's almost like a scaffolding approach from us. So we've gone in. Excuse me. First year, delivered the basic futsal concepts alongside the enjoyment factor. Whereas this year we're looking to drill down that a little bit further and really sort of further extend our players, both obviously playing wise, but also in terms of their understanding. And then last big thing is growing the games for our senior teams. So as mentioned, looks like a shorter grass season, so we're really going to try and sort of piggyback off the back of it, and use it as an opportunity to grow the futsal game and grow our program into our senior space. So that's the key aims for this year coming up. And overall, so beyond this futsal season, it's something that we look at in terms of trying to potentially create a futsal pathway for our youth players and up, so from our 13-year-olds up, and running this program all year. And we know that there's a couple of clubs in close to our area that have already looked into this, and some are looking to implement it sooner rather than later. We as a club see futsal aligning with, in terms of our junior space, aligning with our football. So using it as an extension to further develop our players. But when we move up into our youth space, it's something that if our players at 13, 14, they want to go down the path of a futsal career, that we have a program set in place for them. But obviously considerations around that. To put that in place is something that we're having discussions around constantly. Things like, do we have the demand? Is there a competition that we can enter for the players? Do we have the space? Do we have the venues to be able to achieve this? How does it look across the year? Is it just going to be 3 terms? Is it going to be all year? And these are things that we're carefully considering at the minute, but it's something that overall we would like to offer our players. And just lastly, just some considerations that at us as a club we took on board, and obviously some consideration for you guys if you're sitting here thinking, yeah, we're going to, look to integrate it into our football programs. Just a few things worth noting. So that holistic player development. So it's so important to develop everything within the player in order for them to have the positive experience. There's no point in making them the best technically gifted player if they have no enjoyment, or they have no fun, or they have no feeling of inclusiveness within your program. So looking at the player holistically. Workload, as I mentioned before, we have integrated it within our clubs, and as you've seen, we have a football and we have a futsal contact a week, and we've got our futsal game contact. We know what our players are doing every week. So we took it on board ourselves. Why would we run our football programs and then have maybe another club or another school running a futsal program, and us potentially clashing in terms of the amount that they're training? So potentially even going from a football training to a futsal training, we couldn't do that to our players. So we wanted to make sure that we were on top of their workload. We were able to manage it, and obviously that has big impacts on burnout, fatigue, injury, and also a lot on enjoyment too. As mentioned before, playing philosophy, so ensuring that it aligns with what you're doing in the football space. There's no point in having them separate, as Alex said. Seeing them as two separate games is fantastic. Knowing the benefits of both is fantastic, but making sure that they align to what you're trying to do in terms of your playing philosophy and how you see the game. Obviously, if you're extending your programs into potentially term 4 or term 1, how does that look in terms of the structure of the program? So do you have a curriculum that aligns to your football curriculum? And at what cost is it potentially going to be? Us as a club, we took it on board that we would offer the program across the year. It was then up to the players if they wanted to avail of the extra futsal contact that was available during the futsal season. Venues, it's all well and good wanting to integrate the game into your football club, but having good quality venues available can be hard to come by. I know we're very lucky in with our club in that the futsal arena is just 3-4 minutes down the road, so it doesn't have an impact in terms of parents travelling to venues and picking kids up from venues. So we've been very fortunate in that. But obviously with the demand of the game, we probably don't get the amount of court time that we would like, and I know a lot of clubs are in that position. So being aware of what's around you, what's available, and how that fits. And then last but not least, looking at that seasonal overlap. So obviously futsal season sort of starts at October time. A lot of sort of key football tournaments might happen October time, November time. So it's important that as a futsal development program, how do we manage that? How do we manage that overlap between the two codes, so from football to futsal? Are we going to enforce that our players must play futsal? Are we going to enforce that they must miss their football and they must miss their other summer codes that they do play? Or do we want to give players the opportunity to play futsal if they want, if that's where they see themselves going? Or do we give them the opportunity, or do you give them the opportunity to play those summer codes that they've done for the past 2-3 years? And understanding the implications that may or may not have on obviously burnout, enjoyment, and whether those kids might come back to you for the football season whenever it starts up again.
Cool. Thanks, Cameron, for showing us a glimpse of what you're doing within your club.
Yeah.
We've got a few questions to come in, and one of the questions was one I was going to ask.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, Matt, if we can start with Ken's question, because that was one I had for Cameron as well.
Yes, well, it's about the football coaches and what sort of objection they had or the resistance they had to being asked to sort of get into learning more of being a futsal coach and the environment in futsal.
Yeah, no problem. Probably within our club, like I said, the futsal was happening within the community space anyway. So we had what we call those facilitators, so parents, potentially football coaches, just taking the kids anyway. So those football coaches who had been there for the football season were often the ones who stuck their hands up and took the kids for the futsal matches at the weekends. So they were obviously committed to the development of the player. Us as a club used that angle and said that, look, this is an extension of the player development, and it's a big aspect of that. So we don't say we encourage them to be involved. Obviously, people have other commitments. We've got some coaches that coach summer codes, so cricket, volleyball, and things like that. But it's something that we look to encourage them to do. And we find that more often than not, those that were involved in the football space were involved in the futsal space prior. It was just then about upskilling them and giving them a little bit more information around the futsal game.
Okay, so it's an easy transition.
A lot easier than what we had expected. But like I said, a lot of the coaches at the club are there for player development, so it was an easier conversation than what we had anticipated. Absolutely.
Okay, thanks a lot.
No problem.
What about Cameron? Obviously, you just talk about coaches, but what about parents? Did you have to sell the idea to the parents, or because they had some sort of pre-involvement in futsal, was it quite easy?
Again, probably an easier conversation than what we had anticipated, in that it was already happening at the club. So players, even though they weren't getting the futsal trainings in term 4, or maybe they hadn't been getting the football trainings even prior to us sort of coming on board, they were still entering the local futsal leagues. So there was still a parent, there was still a football coach taking the futsal teams at the weekend anyway. So it wasn't something that the parents hadn't been used to, and obviously potential kickback might have been from those parents who had been involved in, or kids who had been involved in different codes, and we didn't say no, you have to do this. It was an opportunity for them to do that if they wished.
Cool. Sam, if we can unmute Sam, he's got a question for Cameron.
Yep.
Cool.
Hi Cameron, Sam here. Absolutely love what you're doing, but as a futsal purist, one thing kind of irked me. Without rotations now, so that's like the movements. You said the players didn't know what they were doing. Is there like a plan where you'll teach them how to create space or recognise paired group team actions?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's probably something that I know in the little club that we don't. We obviously spend time on coaching it, and more so, our youth players are probably getting it a lot more. But in terms of those junior players, we may touch on a couple of different actions that they may see. But if the game teaches them the rotations and the understanding of movement and to come to the ball, to move away from the ball, that's happening a lot in the game. So it's up to us then as coaches to try and maybe provide that extra little bit of understanding on top of that. But especially in our junior space, it's something that we see happens more often than not without us even touching on it, and that's just the nature of the game, as I said.
Okay, interesting.
Cool. Matt, have we got? Just trying to have a look through the chat. Have we got some other questions, or?
I think that was it. Although Stephen wanted to know what the name of your club was.
Oh, you there, Cameron?
Yes, I am indeed.
Yeah. So yeah, just give us just what your club name and then just the question was who are you?
So where I'm operating? Yes. Yeah. So I'm operating at Tauranga City Football Club, just over in New Zealand. So based in the Bay of Plenty, just south of Auckland.
Yeah. Well, if we don't have any more questions, there's one here about explaining the concept of overload in futsal from Henry. So if we can get Henry unmuted, and then you can explain that question for us.
Yeah, hi Cameron. Just in regards to the concept of overloads in a futsal sense, can you just elaborate on what that concept is exactly, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of overload, and I know I mentioned it before, in terms of using the goalkeeper as an overload, so obviously we can use the goalkeeper in futsal to a certain degree. So knowing that and appreciating that within our defensive half, should any of our advanced players be marked or be struggling to create space for themselves or others, using that goalkeeper as an extension to us as a unit to try and progress the ball forward. So say in our defensive half, we've got 2 defenders, and we've got our goalkeeper against 2 opposition attackers. If we give the ball to our goalkeeper and encourage one of their attackers to come towards the goalkeeper, then we can look to maybe release one of the players who've now been freed from an opposition player. And then in terms of the attacking half, it could be potentially somebody picking the ball up on the left-hand side of the attacking half and being in a 1v1 situation with a player, and potentially one of our players moving above the ball, so running past the ball or supporting maybe to the side of the ball or behind. That might encourage the opposition player to move away from the person who has the ball, so then we can look to advance it further.
So Cameron, I've just got one question that kind of tangents off that. What about the rules you play in your junior football competitions and the pass back rule to the goalkeeper?
So in terms of the retreating line and things?
No, in terms of if you play out and you play across and you play back to the keeper in the senior level, there's the pass back rule.
Yeah.
Is that non-existent in your junior futsal competitions that you play in, or is that rule also played?
No, that rule's also played. So obviously the understanding around that with our players, like I said, we can use the goalkeeper to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But players understanding that, but knowing that when we can use it and how we use it and when is the right time to use it, again, that's happening implicitly without the players even knowing.
Okay, no, cool. All right, no, if there doesn't seem to be too many more questions, so thank you for coming on board, Cameron, and sharing what you're doing at your club. And I think it's something that gives some people some thought about when they go away and have discussions with people in their own club about, well, where do we see it fitting in with us? Is it something that we're going to bring into our club, or is it something that's going to sit on the outside? And I think one of the things you highlighted there was, for your junior and youth players that often they were going to be playing futsal anyway.
Yeah.
Here's a way that you can integrate it into your club with development reasons, but also monitoring your players' workload to guide against overuse injuries and also player burnout. So in that context, very smart move. And again, I think from my experience, one of the early adapters where a club's actually brought the two programs together and housed them under the club's banner. So good luck with your programs.
Thank you very much.
Good luck with getting football in your club back underway when you're allowed. And
hopefully. Good
luck with everything about integrating the programs, because I think the club's doing a tremendous job. And I know some of the people who are involved, and you've got some really good people. So I'm sure it's going to progress really well. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So that brings another workshop to a close. Again, we've recorded the workshop and we'll put it up within the next 48 hours online. So if you want to have another watch of certain aspects, or you want to share it within coaches within your network, feel free. And Matt, there's a web page you've just set up, is that right?
Yeah, so you'll find that on the Football SA homepage. I tried to post the link in the comments, but it doesn't look like it's worked properly. You might need to copy and paste that. But yeah, feel free to share that link around. So each week I'll upload the full version to that page, and I'll also upload the links to our social medias as well. Okay, and what we'll do, we'll get that out to you. Keep a lookout towards the end of the week. Thursday we'll be announcing our guest presenter and our topic for next week, and look forward to seeing you back here next Monday. And hopefully that's a week closer till we actually get out and we get to play football or futsal or whatever version of our game that you're involved with. Up until then, if you've got any additional questions, feel free to flick me an email. If it's something to Cristiano or Cameron, I'm sure they'll be more than happy that I forward it on if there's some information that you're after. Otherwise than that, enjoy your week, and we'll hopefully see you back here next week. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Goodbye.